4. The task seems an immense one, and it is natural to feel diffidence in the face of it, but here are such conjectures as I have been able to make. After primal man had discovered that it lay in his own hands, literally, to improve his lot on earth by working, it cannot have been a matter of indifference to him whether another man worked with or against him. The other man acquired the value for him of a fellow worker, with whom it was useful to live together. Even earlier in his ape-like prehistory, man had adopted the habit of forming families, and the members of his family were probably his first helpers. One may suppose that the founding of families was connected with the fact that a moment came when the need for genital satisfaction no longer made its appearance like a guest who drops in suddenly, and after his departure is heard of no more for a long time, but instead took up its quarters as a permanent lodger. When this happened, the male acquired a motive for keeping the female, or speaking more generally, his sexual objects, near him, while the female, who did not want to be separated from her helpless young, was obliged, in their interest, to remain with the stronger male. In this primitive family, one essential feature of civilization is still lacking. The arbitrary will of its head, the father, was unrestricted. In Totem and Taboo, I have tried to show how the way led from this family to the succeeding stage of communal life in the form of bands of brothers. In overpowering their father, the sons had made the discovery that a combination can be stronger than a single individual. The totemic culture is based on the restrictions which the sons had to impose on one another in order to keep this new state of affairs in being. The taboo observances were the first right, or law. The communal life of human beings had, therefore, a twofold foundation: the compulsion to work, which was created by external necessity, and the power of love, which made the man unwilling to be deprived of his sexual object, the woman, and made the woman unwilling to be deprived of the part of herself which had been separated off from her, her child. Eros and Ananke have become the parents of human civilization too. The first result of civilization was that even a fairly large number of people were now able to live together in a community, and since these two great powers were cooperating in this, one might expect that the further development of civilization would proceed smoothly towards an even better control over the external world and towards a further extension of the number of people included in the community. Nor is it easy to understand how this civilization could act upon its participants otherwise than to make them happy. Before we go on to inquire from what quarter an interference might arise, this recognition of love as one of the foundations of civilization may serve as an excuse for digression, which will enable us to fill in a gap which we left in an earlier discussion. We said there that man's discovery that sexual, genital love afforded him the strongest experiences of satisfaction, and in fact provided him with a prototype of all happiness, must have suggested to him that he should continue to seek the satisfaction of happiness in his life along the path of sexual relations, and that he should make genital eroticism the central point of his life. We want to say that in doing so he made himself dependent in a most dangerous way on a portion of the external world, namely his chosen love object, and exposed himself to extreme suffering if he should be rejected by that object, or should lose it through unfaithfulness or death. For that reason, the wise men of every age have warned us most emphatically against this way of life, but in spite of this, it has not lost its attraction for a great number of people. A small minority are enabled by their constitution to find happiness, in spite of everything, along the path of love. But far-reaching mental changes in the function of love are necessary before this can happen. These people make themselves independent of their object's acquiescence by displacing what they mainly value from being loved on to loving. They protect themselves against the loss of the object by directing their love, not to single objects, but to all men alike. And they avoid the uncertainties and disappointments of genital love by turning away from its sexual aims and transforming the instinct into an impulse with an inhibited aim. What they bring about in themselves in this way is a state of evenly suspended, steadfast, affectionate feeling, which has little external resemblance any more to the stormy agitations of genital love, from which it is nevertheless derived. Perhaps St. Francis of Assisi went furthest in thus exploiting love for the benefit of an inner feeling of happiness. Moreover, what we have recognized as one of the techniques for fulfilling the pleasure principle has often been brought into connection with religion. This connection may lie in the remote regions where the distinction between ego and objects, or between objects themselves, is neglected. According to one ethical view, whose deeper motivation will become clear to us presently, this readiness for a universal love of mankind and the world represents the highest standpoint which man can reach. Even at this stage of the discussion, I should like to bring forward my two main objections to this view. A love that does not discriminate seems to me to forfeit a part of its own value by doing an injustice to its object. And secondly, not all men are worthy of love. The love which founded the family continues to operate in civilization both in its original form, in which it does not renounce direct sexual satisfaction, and in its modified form as an aim-inhibited affection. In each, it continues to carry on its function of binding together considerable numbers of people, and it does so in a more intensive fashion than can be effected through the interest of work in common. The careless way in which language uses the word love has its genetic justification. People give the name love to the relation between a man and a woman whose genital needs have led them to found a family. But they also give the name love to the positive feelings between parents and children, and between the brothers and sisters of a family, although we are obliged to describe this as aim-inhibited love, or affection. Love with an inhibited aim was in fact originally fully sensual love, and it is still so in man's unconscious. Both fully sensual love and aim-inhibited love extend outside the family and create new bonds with people who before were strangers. Genital love leads to the formation of new families, and aim-inhibited love to friendships, which become valuable from a cultural standpoint because they escape some of the limitations of genital love, as for instance its exclusiveness. But in the course of development, the relation of love to civilization loses its unambiguity. On the one hand, love comes into opposition to the interests of civilization. On the other, civilization threatens love with substantial restrictions. This rift between them seems unavoidable. The reason for it is not immediately recognizable. It expresses itself at first as a conflict between the family and the larger community to which the individual belongs. We have already perceived that one of the main endeavors of civilization is to bring people together into large unities, but the family will not give the individual up. The more closely the members of a family are attached to one another, the more often do they tend to cut themselves off from others, and the more difficult is it for them to enter into the wider circle of life. The mode of life in common, which is phylogenetically the older, and which is the only one that exists in childhood, will not let itself be superseded by the cultural mode of life which has been acquired later. Detaching himself from his family becomes a task that faces every young person, and society often helps him in the solution of it by means of puberty and initiation rites. We get the impression that these are difficulties which are inherent in all psychical, and indeed at bottom in all organic, development.